Hi, good evening. I hope you can hear me. Welcome to my chat. My name is Sadhana if you're new to my channel, and this is my regular Thursday night live. And tonight I'm going to be talking about year ahead readings as well as, I'm going to move this down, I feel like I'm cracking my neck, as well as just the year 2020 in general and what it means energetically to be in a 4-year. So welcome, and please join in the conversation. And if you're joining and watching the video a little bit later, please feel free to ask questions. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my process yesterday and the day before. So on New Year's Eve, I think it was New Year's Eve day, I started to do year ahead readings for each of the tarot cards. And I did not do a reading for 1, 2, 3, and 4. So because I assumed that there would be no calculation that would have that as the card of the year. And I know several people do the calculations in different ways. And so you come up with a different number. And I really think that is a practice. So year to year, if you're consistent with your practice, then you will have a regular cycle of cards. So don't feel like you have to do it the way that I do it if you have always done it a different way by adding so the way that I calculate the year ahead is to actually separate the numbers for the month and the numbers for the day. But some people add everything together. So if you are December, it's 12. And if you're 27, it's 27. And so you will get a different number. And sometimes what will happen is you will end up with the associated card because that's just kind of the way numerology works. And so you can look at your card for the associated number as well as the number that you drew. Hi, I see some people are chiming in. Welcome, Jen. Happy New Year and Happy New Year, Whale Song. I know you told me your name, Whale Song, and we had correspondence by email, and your name has slipped me. So if you would like me to call you something else on these live chats, please let me know what your name is. Oh, hi, Kyle. Yeah, so welcome. Happy New Year to everyone. And like I said, so tonight I'm going to talk about the 4-year, and I'm just going to kind of recap what happened over the last couple of days when I was doing those readings. As well, I did a bunch of those readings at the store, and the store where I occasionally work, which is in a town not too far from here. And it really was, it felt, I haven't ever done like that many readings for people without having contact with them. I usually make sure that I have contact with people. And so I don't do like a card of a week and things like that. I've thought about doing that regularly on my channel, and it's something I may do. I know a lot of people like that, right? You go to the channel and you pick your card or you pick your pile and you get a reading every week or every month. I don't know. What do you think of those readings? Do they resonate with you? Is it just fun? And I'm also curious what channel you really like, because I've been kind of skulking around YouTube tarot land, and trying to figure out, which readers I really seem to really know what they're doing and how they pick their piles of cards and that. So if that's something you would like me to do, can you let me know, and let me know what you like about the ones that you already watched, because I want to do something a little bit different. And so that's kind of in my mind. But anyway, getting back to the year ahead readings, it was really fun. It was also really overwhelming. Lori. So yes, I know some people like to have their privacy on YouTube and they prefer to be called, especially in a live chat, by their YouTube name. So I completely understand that. Sacred Turtle, hi, welcome to my channel. I don't know if you've made a live before, so welcome. And if I miss anybody's, greeting you on YouTube, I want you to know I'm still pretty new to this, and it's really challenging, and I really appreciate it when hi Nina, I really appreciate it when the moderators say hi to everyone, because sometimes I miss it, and oh my God, I mispronounced a lot of names and things like that. Jen says, I generally don't watch them for insight, but that's only because I do it for myself. I will, however, watch some, as I love seeing how others interpret. Yeah. And I think that's why, yeah, hi, Ida. Hi. And you're one, Yaha, what would you like me to call you on YouTube if I'm addressing you? I just asked, what people like to be called. Um, Yaha Ida 8A. I feel like I'm wandering. I want to go back and share with you this experience. And so the night before I started doing this, I kind of was meditating and trying to check in whether or not this was something I wanted to do. I'm talking about the year ahead readings. And it was like loud and clear, yes, do this, Sadhana, do this. And I was thinking about decks, and for some reason, it was without a doubt that I was to go back and use the Druidcraft, because it's not a deck I've been using lately, and it was so much fun to go back and use that deck. It has such a beautiful, beautiful energy. And I've done a couple of videos with my Druid Plant Oracle and Druid Animal Oracle, and I really, really like them, especially the plant. I have a lot of plant decks, a lot of flower decks, but there's something about that one. It is just, I don't know, it's really, really magical, mystical, it's really witchy. And if you don't have that plant oracle, it's not super like pretty like a lot of decks. The one that I have, the printing is kind of faded, so it's not as saturated, it's not as intense as the Druid Craft Tarot, but there's something about the way it reads, and it's really cool. So those decks were loud and clear, and then I thought automatically I was going to use the Druid Animal, but it just didn't really come into the play, and so I ended up using that Fauna deck, and it was fantastic. I've never used it in a group reading before. I've used it for single draws and things like that, but man, those cards, those messages on the back are really, really something. So let me know what you thought about my choice in cards. And then I also had Roots and Wings, as well as Yahaira. Yahaira. Is that how you say it? Yahaira? Yaha. I don't know what language I'm speaking, so let me know what language it is. Kyle says, yes, she picked up her Druidcraft right after. I was drawn right back into it. Yeah, it's this really kind of beautiful world and place. And then Roots and Wings, somehow I really wanted to use that. That was kind of my personal choice. And then the other deck was one of Colette's decks. It was the Mystical Shaman, and I really wanted to use that one. Of all of her decks, that is like the deck. Like I totally connect with that deck, and I feel if in any of her decks there has been too much ego, or too much commercialism, that was a very high-end package deck, like a lot of paper, a lot of boxes, a lot of packaging, fancy. But the quality of the way the cards read it's really beautiful. I think of her decks, it's the one that I would never trade. And I call it her deck, but I think we need to really credit Jenna. And I try to always credit Jenna Della Grottaglia, because her artwork, the way she's like a master of computer collage artwork. It's just really, really stunning. So, hats off to her always. So let's see who else is here. Vera. Hi, Vera. Welcome to my channel. So yeah, so then I chose those 4 decks. Which CBR deck? So in those readings, I used the Mystical Shaman Oracle, and it is bar none, like her best deck. When people are starting using tarot and oracle cards, I kind of feel like some of her decks work really well. I'm going to draw a blank here. Wisdom, is it called Wisdom of the Oracle? I've shared that with quite a few young people who want to get going on with cards and decks, and I feel it's really soft and lovely, and it's easy to connect with, and it has some really deep messages. And sometimes I use the map, the enchanted map, when I'm doing past life readings. But there's something about that mystical shaman that is really, really good. And I have a feeling it has to do with her collaborators, because there were some like really good collaborators on that deck. So yeah, so those were the decks that I chose. And I just felt it really worked out. And so then, because I was doing so many readings, I wanted to figure out, and like, I don't know how many of you do those kind of things, but you know, do you shuffle every deck, every reading, or do you put the intention in that as the cards fall, you can just turn them over, you know, one by one. And then of course, because I was doing 18 readings, there's only 14 of each suit. But what happened was I got to the reading for the star card, and I felt like I hit a wall, probably energetically, but also the cards hit a wall. And so I took a break, came back, reshuffled all the decks, and then what happened? And then the star reading was the hardest reading of all the readings. It just did not flow. And so I really kind of dug deep and went back and just went step by step. And sometimes for me, when I look at a spread, so you're looking at all the cards together on the table, there's just this story that emerges. But the star reading, it was like pulling teeth, quite literally. And so I really went back to my basics, and it was a real kind of effort for me. And so for sure, some of those readings flowed way more easily than others. And I don't know why. I don't know why that is. Just sometimes it's really hard to connect the dots. And I think that's something that we all struggle with as readers, is sometimes those dots just don't want to connect. And so my advice for you is to really go back and just take it, because I don't think we should read cards individually. There's always a story. There's always a connection. The most important card is usually the one in the center. And so just go back, and I was just drawing the message from that cards on the outside to the cards in the middle, and just talking and telling a story. And if you saw any of those readings, you'll know that several of the cards, I didn't use a traditional meaning at all for the cards. I just kind of allowed the deck to tell the story. So yeah, I was really kind of happy with how that turned out. Her animal oracle. Oh yeah, the spirit animal. I'm just looking at Nina's comment. I couldn't see from Temperance through to the tower. It seemed to have cut off. Okay, well, it's there, and I have watched the replay. So if anybody else has trouble with that second video, oh no, it's a second video, Jen. There's two videos. There's videos, oh my God. There's two, yeah, I posted two separate videos. So it goes to, it goes to 5 until 13. And then 14 to 22 is on a separate video. So have a look for the second video. I did it over 2 days. Hi, Natalia. Thank you for the energy you put into them. It did resonate with me. However, I still appreciate all the work you have. Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Yeah. And I know in some of the readings, I didn't go back to that basic question, was how in a number 4 year do each of those tarot cards, how are they going to be, how are they going to function? And I have, you want to see how many notes I have for tonight? This is how many notes I have for tonight. I've been thinking about this a lot, and my head is really full. So I decided just to kind of flow, you know, with what came up. But a 4 year, and I talked about this a little bit with the Tower card, and there was something, I had this visual of the Tower and 4444 in a 4 year, like all these square blocks kind of stacking on top of each other. And it felt like felt like a skyscraper. It felt like, why is there no design? Why is it so solid? Why is it so structured? And it felt like holding on really, really tight. And then I kind of had this image of stuff kind of leaking out of the seams. And I thought, whoa, no wonder that tower needs to explode. And we really need to. It was kind of a whole new perspective of the tower for me. You know, that the like if you've ever really contemplated a volcano, or you do work with crystals and you've ever really thought about, I know all crystals are not formed with heat, but that the way the pressure and the heat and all that generates. And so the tower is like, yeah, it's like this, the tension has to blow, the steam has to release somehow, some way, or else it's going to release in a different direction. And I think that different direction causes way more damage. And it was a really kind of beautiful aha moment for me when I was doing that. And that thought actually came up when I was doing the 15 reading. And it was really weird how I was like a whole reading ahead. So let's kind of see what we got here. Whale song. Lori says, I hit a wall often when I use the lovers as a significator card for some reason. So I usually do a this or that spread. Yeah, lovers is a really tricky one because lovers has a connection, of course, to the devil, and lovers has so many layers and levels. And if you saw my reading for the lovers, and there's a couple of other readings where we had some really deep connection, the reading that had the cuckoo pint. So the cuckoo pint is, I forget what they call it here. I used to have some in my backyard in Whistler, and it's kind of like hostas, but not. But anyway, it has this, it looks like a lily, really, right? It has this beautiful petal, and then it has a stamen that comes up. And so I talked a lot about this metaphor of this, union of the divine masculine energy, the divine feminine energy, and that lover's card sometimes is about really, finding that in yourself. And I think with the lover's card, there's just so many layers and so many metaphors and so many teachings. It's a really hard card to read. Yeah. All right. I heard someone call 2020 double judgment. Yes. Double judgment. Yeah, and double judgment would mean that if you haven't, this is what it would mean to me, if you haven't had the courage to step out on your path. I find just like so many people just do what they're supposed to do, or do what they always wanted to do. And I did share one of my stories about that. And I think even if we can't quit our job, even if we can't move to the country that we want to move to, or the place that we want to move to for various reasons, somehow, some way, there comes a point in a time where we need to kind of step out and just go for it. And who cares what other people think? Your kids are all going to follow you eventually, or they're somehow going to forgive you, and your family's going to love you anyway. There's just like this real need to step out and to step forward. So let's get back to this. I'm going to kind of go back to the number 4 and the solidity of the number 4. And so I thought a lot about, the emperor, and we don't have a lot of emperors in our culture anymore, right? There's not too many kings around either. It's kind of a historical metaphor. And if you just think of the sheer responsibility of being an emperor, how can an emperor be a good father? How can an emperor be healthy? Seriously, like the responsibility is so onerous, and no wonder the emperor had so many servants and so many people looking after him, and um, multiple concubines. There's no way an emperor could maintain a relationship with one person, like, so like crazy kind of imagery if you really think about it, really think about what it meant to be an emperor, and even kind of bring that down a level to, like, the leader of a country or something like that. I feel like it's huge. It's so much responsibility. And so if you kind of have that, so there's kind of the emperor bit, there's the kind of structure, the foundation of the four bit, and then there's also this kind of really beautiful completion piece too, right? So we have one, we have two, we have the triangle of the three, and then this four. I was thinking about, like families, two kids, a mom and a dad, or two parents and two kids, and the sort of the completeness of the four. And not too many families expand out to the five. So there's also this kind of satisfaction with the number four. So there's so many, and of course, numerologically, we have lots of places we can dig into with the number four. And if you go through this year, oh, I know, let's go back. So keep all of those things in the back of your mind. I wanted to talk about, like, why should we have the awareness of the four, or if you want to go for the double judgment, you could do that too. I mean, that's really big. Why would it be beneficial to be aware of the fact that we're in a 4-year? And I'm trying to think when it was that I really started following moon cycles and really embracing the moon. It was quite a few years ago. And this is actually a really funny story. So I was definitely in perimenopause. I had not had a period for almost 2 years. It was, I was keeping track of things, and I went to a retreat, or a workshop, or something, some kind of yoga event. I remember exactly where it was, who it was. And there are a lot of women in their 20s and 30s at this event. And I started bleeding. And it was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, wow, I was not prepared for this, energetically, physically, anything. And it was also really funny because I think every single woman at that event used a Diva cup. And in my day and age, there was no such thing as Diva cups. Well, maybe there was, but I wasn't aware of it. Pretty funny. So the point of me sharing this with you, is that our bodies, our physical bodies, energetically want to be in sync with our environment. It's that simple. And sometimes our bodies naturally, those toys where you have the balls and they go click, 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 and you can start it in chaos, but very quickly they come back into synchronicity. So that's the way the universe wants to work. The universe, everything moves and works much more fluidly if we are in sync, if we are aware of that energy of what's going on. And so that's why that bringing awareness to, okay, this is a 4-year, knowing that, how will that affect my decisions? And I was trying to think of a few different examples, which I will come back to. So I'm just going to kind of check in with what's happening over here. Yeah, the tower cannot hold it all in. Yeah, I think having the tower card for your year it's going to be really challenging, but it's also, well, you saw the reading. I think it's really important to let that tension go, whatever that tension is. There just comes a point where it has to go somewhere. The layers. I have always felt the Emperor would have difficulty finding balance with all the aspects of life, but I don't feel that way about the Empress. And their numbers are 4 and 3, square versus tripod. Mhm. I was thinking too that maybe I'll just comment on the difference between a 3 and a 4-year, the Empress and the Emperor. Being a great emperor requires high morality and personal values. I believe that having a power is a huge test of who you really are. It's not as easy maybe as it could be. You know, in that Spider-Man movie, the very first one, like the first series with Tobey Maguire, before his uncle dies and he hops in the car and he says, talks to him about great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. I think that's a really good quote to kind of have in your journal or on your mirror anytime you step into a role of power, whether that's even just like chairing your kids' soccer club board meetings. You know, I think we need to really be respectful of these positions of power. These power is going to feed and it's going to stimulate the ego, and it's going to really bring up all of the shadow stuff and our feeling of inadequacy and that kind of stuff. So it's really important to be aware of that. I was thinking, you know, some examples, and one of them was, well, if the Empress year is a year of flourishing and creativity and birth and expansion in that way, what's the difference between the expansion of an emperor who goes out and conquers different lands, you know, compared to the expansion of the Empress? And this is a crazy thing that came up, but maybe in a 4-year, adoption would be a better choice than giving birth to a baby. I don't know if that makes any sense. That was a random thought that came to me. So if you have some really big decisions to make, you might want to ask yourself, what is the energy like? How would the Empress do it, as opposed to how would the Emperor do it? And so really thinking about working in sync with cycles. And so going back to this whole moon thing. So after that event, I really started embracing the moon cycles and being aware of when the new moon was, when the full moon was, and journaling about it, doing, you know, spells, magic, intentions, pulling cards, doing readings for the moon. And it really, really helped me. I even have a Tide, I don't have a Tide app, but I have the Tide tables bookmarked on my browser. So when I go for my walks and I go down to the beach, I check the tide table. It's just this, and I don't really understand it all. I know what those little arrows mean, if the tide is up or the tide is down. But I think just being aware of the cycles can help. It just makes everything, it makes you flow, your life flow so much easier. So yeah. And so, yeah, I'd be really interested to know if you could think of some other examples where it would be beneficial to act more like an emperor. Voltaire is the original quote. Thank you, Nina. I know it didn't come from Spider-Man. You're right, though. There aren't too many models of an emperor in our society. Are there even any? Yeah. I don't know if there's any emperors left. I know there's a few kings left, but I don't know if there's any emperors. And, you know, most emperors, we know their names, we know their tragic endings and things like that. But let's go back and kind of think about, okay, so what's going to work in a 4-year? And so if you are, and I kind of address this in the readings. So there's certain cards that are going to flourish in a 4-year because they're going to feel supported by that structure. And I think structure is a good word because structure kind of fits the energy of an emperor, and it kind of fits the energy numerologically. And then certain cards are not going to thrive with that kind of structure, right? I think it's pretty simple that way. You know, if you're looking to go into a new relationship, when I think about a new relationship and when I think about, you know, the emotions blossoming and when I think about the sense of adventure and fun and freedom and all of that, I think it would be not great in a 4 year. In a 4 year, as far as relationships and that kind of thing goes, this is a year for, well, you can think of the Four of Wands, right? So it would be a good year for commitment and the structure of marriage or the institution of marriage or settling into routines, or if you had decisions of maybe different kinds of schools you were sending your kids to, you know, the more traditional, it would speak to the more traditional kind of school as to more of a free thinking kind of school. Does that make sense? And so as choices arise, think about that. Think about the different shapes, the triangles versus the circles versus the squares. And I think it might help to make a decision. All right. I could not remember who said, okay, so we're just talking about Voltaire. Yeah, I know. It's really hard sometimes to remember where all these quotes from. And I'm the first one to go to Google and say, oh my goodness, where did this quote come from? So if any of you have seen your reading yesterday and there was any part of your reading that didn't really resonate or didn't make sense, you can let me know about that because I can go back and look at it. And the same with last week. It was really nice. I think Kyle was the only one who followed up with me. And it is sometimes it takes a while to integrate a reading and to absorb a reading. And that's why I asked you to kind of take a screenshot of it just to think about it. And when you do a reading for yourself, I hope that you at least write down, you know, which cards you've drawn. And if you're doing a daily pull, maybe you're not keeping track of that, but on your birth date, beginning of the year, beginning of the month, you know, if you're deciding this year you're going to do full moon readings or new moon readings, like to write them down and to follow them through and just be aware of how these cycles progress. So you missed yesterday. Well, you can go back and look at your reading. So I thought I would go through each of the cards and just very quickly see if we could come up with a word or we could come up with a question to support that card. So starting with the Hierophant, and not many people will have that number because it is it would have added up to would have been 23, right? 23, so 2 plus 3, so just a few people would have the Hierophant. And if we, you know, and the Hierophant is another one that's really tricky because depending on the deck you're using, depending on how you kind of see that card, it has a huge array of interpretations from, you know, really from like the Pope to something really quite religious and fixed in their ideas to something like the Everyday Witch, where you've got the yoga teacher sitting on the mat like this, right? And then you've got in the Lumina Tarot, I love that one. It's a shaman, and he's just like so connected. It's really beautiful. Lauren Lettuce deck, the Lumina Tarot. And so there's quite a few different interpretations of the shaman, the medicine man, the medicine woman, and things like that. And depending on how you view that is also going to affect how you function in the 4-year. Right? So if you kind of take the Hierophant as more of a structured, somebody who works at an institution and that kind of a teacher, right? As opposed to some of the other examples I gave, then it's going to be a little more challenging for you if you are more of a free thinker, as opposed to you kind of are a straight up follower of a certain religion, right? So that, I think that variable may come up with different cards throughout the whole thing. So I talked about the lovers briefly, and if you are, it never fails to amaze me, the number of love readings, the number of relationship readings. Will he come back? Should I go? What did he really mean? Why did he leave? Why did she hurt me in that way? Is she my soulmate? You know, like, we are so, it's just so important to so many people. And the Lover's card, if it comes up in a reading with supporting cards, you know, it's can definitely lean toward that. It can lean toward relationship. It can lean toward very soulful relationships. But I think the Lover's card is so much bigger, so much bigger. And I think it all kind of boils down to that for the people who drew the 6, it is about this year of really finding that place within yourself where, first of all, you love yourself, unconditionally love yourself, whether you have a zit on the end of your nose or whether you're just really not, or whether you feel like, what do I want to say? Like, if you want to stay home and you don't want to go out to an event, then don't criticize yourself. Self-deprecation, right? So being really gentle and kind with yourself so that you can learn to find comfort in your strength with all of the fiery qualities, with all of the strong masculine qualities, as well as the strength of your feminine qualities, and the softness and the gentleness of both of those qualities too. And when we talk about, I talked about the Cuckoo Pint card, because I think the description in that guidebook is really, it's really well done, and it's very integrated as far as different spiritualities are concerned. But and my closest, what I know best is the study of yoga, and we call the divine feminine energy Prakriti and the divine masculine is Purusha. And everything that is manifest in this world is a representative of, represents the divine feminine energy. And all that is cosmic and unseen and untouchable is the divine masculine energy. And I think a lot of us here are highly spiritual, or spiritually, you know, secretly spiritual. And so there's this place of, and this is kind of a high priestess issue too, right? Of being in this world and finding that beautiful union between being spiritual and being grounded. And there's this aspect of that, you know, with the lovers as well too. So the lovers in a 4-year needs to be able to kind of flow and to go back and forth and in and out, and to really explore relationship, to explore the relationship with your children and your parents and everybody that is in front of you. I have a really beautiful book about relationship. It's called The Yoga of Relationships. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Amrit Yoga Institute in Florida, but it is written by the leader of that institution. It's called The Yoga of Relationships, and you can buy it on Amazon. And what he does so beautifully in that book is to discuss how every single relationship is a mirror. And so in a 4-year, I don't know, I think it might be more challenging with relationships. It's just my kind of sense of that, right? I would, there's going to have to be some discipline in, because relationships always take work. And the relationships that are the most difficult, I feel, are going to be like firing back really hard in a 4 years. So, you know, take your time with that and amp up your reading as far as relationships and all of that goes. So I'm just going to I did a screenshot and took notes. Well, your word fragility is really sticking with me. It was funny when I was talking. Sometimes when you're talking and it's like, or you're doing your spelling and you're writing down and you look at the word THE, and for the life of you, you can't figure out if that's how you spell it. Well, it was like that with the word fragility. I was like, is that really a word? It's funny how sometimes language is just so confusing. So whale song is in a hermit year. So let's go on to Chariot. And I think Chariot people, if you didn't join us for the Chariot Live, definitely go back and have a look at the Chariot Live, because we really talked about that card in every aspect of the Chariot card. But the 7 in a 4-year, the 7 needs to move. This is a year of action. It's a year of stepping forward. So the Emperor is going to step forward in a really strategic way, right? And then the Empress is going to kind of it's completely different. So I feel like if you have 7, it needs to be, there needs to be a bit of planning with this. And I think generally speaking, the downfall of the Chariot card is the rashness and not knowing which way to go. So definitely the planning of the Chariot card. So Chariot people, definitely go back and watch that video. And same with the Strength people, because we really covered that in another video. But the inner strength, I think, will definitely be supported in an Emperor year, in a 4-year, in a foundation, fundamental year, just because we have 4 + 4. But at the same time, that inner strength comes from, actually, no, I think it will be really good for number 8 people. Number 8 people. The reason I'm saying that is the issue of my will versus thy will, the issue of the all of the issues that come up in the solar plexus are fiery. And yeah, I think it's going to be a good year for those people, right? The Hermit might like the confines of the structure, but the Hermit needs to kind of go out and find his hermitage and find his place and to find his own way of going inward. And the Hermit in most every deck, whether it's an animal or whether it's a human, has a lantern, and there's this sense of being a guiding light. The word guru means the dispeller of darkness. So one of the things that, I don't know if you're interested in this, but a lot of the swamis, the higher level swamis, wear black. And the reason they wear black is because they are able to, black absorbs light, black absorbs all the colors, and they are able to carry that off because they can take on that energy. And one of sadhanas, sadhana means your practice. It means whether you do mantra or you do physical yoga practice, or whether your sadhana is to only eat vegan, right? One of my sadhanas is to not wear black, because I want to reflect light. I want to be in the light. There's something about the darkness of the black. And I was actually told by a teacher not to wear black. And when I go to her place to do work, we're not allowed to wear anything black. And it's gotten to a point where if I put on black, so maybe I've got a colorful top on and I just stick on like a black skirt or something, it feels so bad, so awful. So let's go back to the Hermit in a 4-year. I think the Hermit needs to find their own way with what that means to go inside. Like, it feels like a really, really personal, a very, very personal year. And the Emperor wants to know what everybody's doing. And the Emperor wants to kind of be dictating what everybody does. So I have this sense that a hermit this year there might be people around you that disapprove of your hermit-like practices. I don't know. Some of these are just feelings, right? As I begin to talk about things, just these messages come through. So I'm just sharing them with you. Kyle, like structure. So simpler is easier to relate to, maybe. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are kind of chatting this up. It is, all of these thoughts are, I think, just considering these things, especially if you have big decisions to make, or if somebody is riling you up, somebody that you, like I had actually I shouldn't tell personal stories because I never know who's watching these videos. So I'm going to retract that. The people who rile you up are the ones who are teaching you something. And so when somebody upsets you, the best thing you can do is to just stop and go, okay, whew, like, why is this upsetting me? Where do I feel this in my body? Because this is about you. It's nothing to do with them. And one of the most beautiful practices, I don't know if you've done this before. This is so you get your notebook and you write down, it's like, I hate it when my partner says da 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 da. I hate it when my mother-in-law blah blah da da da. It upsets me so much when my kids do this. And you write down like a few sentences like this and take some time with it. And I really shouldn't tell you the other side of this because it kind of blows the exercise. But then you take out my partner, you cross out the mother-in-law, you cross out the kids, and you put your name there. And then what you do is you take your piece of paper, you go to a mirror, and you say, I hate it when you say that. And you repeat each of those sentences, replacing your name with the person's name who irritates you. And sometimes right away, it'll like hit you in the gut and you'll understand what it's all about. But it's a really beautiful and equally hard practice. So just sharing that with you. I see orange. Yeah, certainly family members are struggling with my hermit time. And so that is, so in a hermit year, you want to create your space, right? You want to create your space and you want to make it loud and clear what your space is, what your rules are. So every day between 5 o'clock and 5:20, I'm in my bedroom. Nobody's allowed to knock on my door and I'm doing my mantra practice. You know, I think if you mirror the authority and the structure of the emperor, maybe that will work, perhaps. Okay, so let's go on to number 10. So the wheel. The wheel. The wheel. So I just had this image of chariots, of emperors going out with these big, I don't know, heavy wheels, conquering things. And then also thinking that the emperor doesn't like change, but at the same time, the emperor kind of plows through change. The emperor just goes out there conquering and acquiring and plowing and maybe has no feelings about change. You know, maybe this is a year to not let change ruffle us so much. And I mean, that's a lifelong lesson, of course, is to not let change ruffle us so much. But that might be, you know, because I feel very little emotion with the Emperor card. And maybe this is a year to really kind of dial that back. And as you go through change, you number 10 people to kind of really observe that. Like, okay, so if I'm getting all stirred up with this change, how can I calm my emotions? What is the other side of that emotion? Because every emotion has a counterpart. And those counterparts of those emotions are part of a whole, right? We can't have the gladness without the sorrow. And they're part of the same piece. And that's part of the lesson of the wheel, is to really understand that, right? It's one. It's not two separate emotions. If you have never practiced, if you're in a wheel year, this might be really good for you. If you've never practiced Yoga Nidra, and this is a stage of Yoga Nidra that is a little bit advanced, and it's not something that if you go to like, what's it called? Like the App Store on iTunes or something, and you look up Yoga Nidra, there's a lot of really crappy ones. There are some better ones. And if you'd like a recommendation, you can message me and I'll try to refer you to one. But one of the stages of Yoga Nidra, and also, I'm sorry, this is a plug for myself, I also create private Yoga Nidras for people depending on what their situation is. And we kind of revise those every 6 weeks or so, depending on how often you practice, and then we kind of change it and add to it, and I can do a recording. So in the practice of Yoga Nidra, one of the stages is to practice the opposites. So you're lying on your back in Shavasana, and you're guided, for example, to feel cool. And so there's a lot of language. The whole body feels cool. Your skin feels cool. Your hands feel cool. Feel the coolness in your ankles, your feet. The whole body is cool. Now leave coolness and create the sensation of warmth. From the center of your solar plexus, allow the feeling of warmth to begin to expand and radiate through your body. Your whole body is warm. Feel the warmth in your hands. Feel the warmth in your feet. Feel the warmth in your face. Feel the glow in your face. And so this practice in Yoga Nidra, we go between the opposites. We go between the opposites. And the purpose of that, and we do like sad and happy and all kinds of different ones. The purpose for that is to understand that when we're feeling cool, we have the ability to feel warm. When we're warm, when we're too hot, and we do hot. And cool and warm is easier than cold and hot. But it's a practice. And so eventually, by practicing this, you can learn to flow with the change much easier. Right? Isn't that cool? Did you know about Yoga Nidra? It's just amazing, amazing practice. So Nina is and Nina, are you Nina? You're not Nina or something? I hope I'm saying your name right, because I say your name often on this video. And if I have messed up any of your names, please, please let me know. I also was, I guess I'm no longer a language teacher, and I'm very, very happy to be corrected about that. Yeah. So 11 justice. 11 in a 4-year. Well, if we kind of think of straight up justice, it's going to be very easy in a 4-year, right? We think about that in a 4-year. But I think so the other aspect of justice is that we don't always like what the justice is or the karma is. I prefer to call that card karma. We don't always like what the medicine is. We don't always like what the justice is. I mean, we reap the, what we have. Here's an example. Suddenly I can't talk. The justice that comes down is what, I don't like to say what we deserve, but it's kind of what we've set up to happen. So we might not be happy with the result, but at that time, in that moment, it is the best situation for us to learn, to move forward. And so justice is it's going to be a really challenging year. I feel like a lot of karmic lessons are going to be loud and clear. And so it's about how you react to those lessons, right? It's about how you react to those decisions. And I think in a 4-year, it's kind of neutral, how it's going to be for you, but I think it will be loud and clear. Loud and clear. And so watch your reactions to each of those situations as they arise. Hanged man, hanged woman, hanged person. I think not so much, right? It's kind of like the hermit. You need your space. You need your space to hang upside down. And you definitely need to get outside of the castle to go and to get a full perspective, right? If we stay with inside the box, right? The Hanged Man year is about getting outside the box, right? So getting outside the kingdom, outside the structure. And I talked about that in the reading. I think that reading felt really good for me. It's a really important part, I think, generally of people's practices, of people's lives, is to learn to do that. And it's going to be hard for you 12 people this year. So you're going to have to be disciplined. You're going to have to really be disciplined in your practices. And so the practice of gaining discernment is about this. It's about this. So there's a lot of different pranayams and practices you can do. There's some very specific meditations to kind of get going on the pineal gland. So you really want to activate the pineal gland, and you want to do lots and lots of exercise for moving lymph in your body. So different kinds of exercise are going to get the lymph flowing, and you want to make sure the lymph is flowing all the time, because you don't want that stagnation in the body. So yeah. And then 13 is, it's actually a really kind of cool year to have. I don't think I've had a 13 year for a while, but it's kind of like a gift. I think for some people, a 13 year it's kind of like a breath of fresh air. Like, oh my God, thank God this is going to be over, right? Thank God I'm going to have, these endings need to happen, but I feel like in a 13 year, it's like, it kind of feels like a breath of fresh air. So how are those endings going to feel in an emperor year? It's a really good question. I don't think I addressed that, or I've even thought about that. How does death feel? How does death feel? How do big endings feel? Well, you're not going to be comforted. You're not going to get much comfort. There's no, doesn't feel like mommy's going to be there to hold on to you or whatever. It feels like you're going to have to be really strong through these endings. And what happens to an emperor if he loses one of his kingdoms? What happens to an emperor if the empress dies? Does he care? Does he get emotional? What happens to the emperor? I mean, what kind of endings would an emperor have? I mean, the emperor's going to have the same kind of endings that we have, but he's not going to be emotional about it. And he's probably going to just not think about it too much. It's just going to be very matter of fact about it. And I have kind of two thoughts on that. One is that it's really important to make sure you process your endings. I mean, if you have any actual deaths this year, that you need to, and this has got nothing to do with the number 4 year, but you need to be in the mood, and you need to allow your experience with death to be complete and to be full, and to not have a timeline over around it. And so maybe that's a good answer to my question, right? So when we say that death has so many stages and the grieving process takes this long, right? That's putting a structure on the experience of death. And that doesn't work. So maybe that answers my own question. So yeah, so just being aware of that will, and that's kind of the same advice of the Hanged Man and the Hermit. You need to find your way to be in the experience of your endings. Yeah, and then 14 is Temperance. So if you do have a specific question, make sure you put it in caps or orange for me. Okay, so let's go on. So Temperance. I love Temperance. I feel, did you see my video? I did a collage video, and I recently pulled out the herb crafters and just doing all those readings with the druid plant last night. I just reminded of how much that kind of, oh, my daughter, I'll tell you about my daughter, because if she watches this, she won't care if I share the story. I wish I had brought the jar to the table. I have 3 daughters and 1 son. And so it goes son, daughter, daughter, and then 10 years later, another daughter. So the first daughter and the second daughter are very spiritual. They're beautiful people. I mean, all my children are, but those 2 are kind of on a similar path to me. And so at Christmas, oh, and by the way, I am not going to do 31 days of tarot. The first question was, I can't do that question. The first question in 31 days of tarot was something about what tarot gifts did you get for Christmas? And I guess I could talk about other tarot gifts besides tarot cards, but I didn't get any material gifts for Christmas. In my family, we do all homemade gifts. So this kind of ties in. So my daughter she made teas for everybody. And they were she's studying herbology. She's studying acupuncture. She's at a school for Chinese medicine right now. She's also a massage therapist, and she's just this really beautiful, caring soul. So my tea, the intention of my tea was for more insightful, better readings. And she didn't have quite enough mugwort to put in the tea, but she was so sweet when she gave the tea to me, and she said, now make sure you check in with me. I want to know how this tea is affecting your readings, and if it's making your readings more clear, and if the downloads are coming more easy and stuff. And it was so beautiful. So that was a reminder to me that just about the beauty of having a temperance year. And my advice to those of you that have temperance this year is to really be playful with it. Yeah, be really playful. And you know what? Just like forget the emperor. Forget the emperor. Just do it anyway. Tell him to be quiet. Tell him to be quiet. Tell him to go and, go check out his stock report or whatever. Just do it, because it's so fun and it's so important and it's so beautiful. So yeah, I love my family. All right, so 15. Oh, that's me. 15 is the devil. Yeah, I was not very happy when I got that card. Of course, right? You don't want to get that card. And in the devil reading, I kind of spent a bit of time exploring why personally that card would come up for me. And I will share with you a story about me. So when I was given the name Sadhana by Swami Satsangi, I was angry. I was upset. I was confused. I was disappointed, because I wanted a sweet name. I wanted a name that meant flower or light or love, or, I didn't want a heavy name, because sadhana seems to come with a lot of responsibility. It means that I need to stick with my sadhana. It means I need to live my sadhana. It means I need to um, teach sadhana. I need to share sadhana. I need to, it felt like so much responsibility. I was so mad at Swami Satsangi when she gave me that name. Oh my goodness. So I, a couple years ago, decided that I was going to stop fighting my name. And so I really began to embrace it. And of course, when you embrace something, things get a lot easier. And I have made some really beautiful practices that flow with ease and feel so supportive of my journey. And yeah, and so now it's okay. I'm not mad at Swami Satsangi anymore. I get it. Not many people have that name in the ashram. I only know one other sadhana. I know there's a few out there in different lineages and so forth, but yeah. So what does that have to do with the devil? What that has to do with the devil is that we are never beyond that kind of deep self-reflection where we can ever stop looking at our compulsions, looking at our shadows, right? I guess that's kind of sums it up, looking at our shadows. And so you kind of think when you do a lot of work, you do a lot of practices, that eventually it's all going to go away. But I think the short answer is that it's a long journey and you need to keep going back to those challenging things. And sure, you can give yourself a break and take a break from your practices for a while, but it's really important to keep coming back to them. And so I think for me, being in a devil year, it's like, okay, this year you're going to really kind of work on all of that. So yeah. So what's happening in the chat, people? Making tea as a gift is a whole different level of love. Oh yeah, making tea with intention. Did I share? I think I shared with you my coffee practice too. I don't know where I shared it, but I did somewhere in one of my videos. And that, in the morning, I blend my beans every morning. I don't have one of these grinders. I wish I did. I have a electric coffee grinder, but I have the cinnamon there, and sometimes I have other spices, and we make all kinds of nut milks and things in the house, and just the whole oh God, and I love it when my other daughter makes a matcha latte. It's just so amazing. But just kind of, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You can just take a little bit of cinnamon and put it in your coffee and just kind of make it a potion, right? So yeah, I love the intention and the magic. But that's kind of going back. So I was on Devil, and now we're on 17. The 17 reading, oh my God, I was just like pulling out my hair, because the star year should be easy. The reading should have been easy. This should have been just like full of hope and light. And it felt, well, I tell the story in the video. Like, I did the star reading. It was the last reading. I was going to do it, pulled the cards, and I was like, what the heck is this? This makes no sense. Okay, I'm either fully like I've done enough readings for today or something, or I don't know. So I ended, and then I came back the next day, reshuffled all the piles. I kind of told this already. And again, the cards were like, what the heck? Like, a star year is like a break. It should be a break. It should not be so difficult in a star year. There should be lightness and the sense of cleansing. And like, a star year is about that. I don't know. I just kind of feel there's a lady who lives not too far from here, and she swims in the ocean from May 1st until about October 1st. And I don't know how old she is, maybe 75. She's really thin, so she doesn't have a lot of body fat on her. She's lovely. I see her all the time at the beach. And why am I telling this story? Oh, I just feel like that going into the ocean, the salt water, like this whole cleansing thing. And I feel like the star year is kind of like that. Like maybe your sadhana in a star year is to commit to going into the ocean every day, even if it's just putting a finger in the winter, like there's something about that, the beauty of the cleansing of the star. And it's like a pause too, right? It's a long ways along the tarot, and it's like this place in the tarot where you can just exhale. But the cards in the reading didn't feel like an exhale. And I suppose I was reacting to that too. So yeah, so in a 4-year, this is another one of those cards where you need to find your space to exhale and to be in the light and to get outside and to be with nature and to find cleansing practices that are easy for you, right? Cleansing practices, purification practices. Like, I don't want you to do a cleanse. You don't need to do these cleanses in a box every month. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, well, could be some forgiveness practices. Definitely could be some moon practices. Could be the gift of a bath more frequently, right? Cleansing, whatever that means to you, like it's a really kind of a beautiful, beautiful energy. Yes, I see somebody type expectations. Oh. So yeah, so watch that this year, you star people. Maybe my reaction to the cards in those readings is kind of how it's going to be in a 4-year. And then if we go on to the moon. So the moon, and I'm looking at my desk here. I have 20 something decks in front of me on the desk. And I've been trying to wind up, like I wanted to do that. I'm doing a series showing all the decks in my collection, and it's called 2019, but it's going to be carrying on for a couple of weeks because this has proven to be quite the process to figure out which decks go into which category. And I've got like 20 decks here. I'm doing shadow decks next. And I'm just trying to look and see what does it mean, shadow cards. And I've got like the moon. I've got a candle here. I don't want to burn myself. I'm just reaching for a deck. So Moonchild. So when I think of shadow work, I think of decks that have a lot of moons. I think of decks that make you look at your the things you don't want to look at. So there is a connection between the devil and the moon card. I don't know if you've ever thought about that. But I started looking at this deck, and this is the Moonchild by Danielle Noel. And it feels very light. Very light. It does not feel, this deck, very shadowy. There's lots of angels, and the colors are very soft, and doesn't feel very challenging. And to me, a shadow deck is challenging. There's cards that make you go, ooh, I don't like that card. It's like I was talking about the other day with that 10 of Swords with the mother and the baby. Like, that's a challenging card, right? That's a challenge. That's a shadow card. And so I was able to pull out a couple of cards in this deck. Here's one. This is the 5 of Swords. It's kind of an unusual 5 of Swords. And so what I've done with these 20-something decks here is to pull out the most shadowy cards from each deck. And so the moon, for me, is about embracing the shadow and being okay with the shadow. And that's also part of the work with the devil. Like, if you look at the cards like Cernunnos and the Wild Huntsman sometimes, and there's this really beautiful kind of like, we want to be okay with our passion, and we want to allow passion to arise, and we want to be be able to look at our darkness and to embrace our darkness as part of us. I was talking about that with something else too, right? It's part of the whole. We cannot have the light without the dark, and the light and the dark are part of the same. And so the moon, the moon card kind of deals with this in a different way. And yeah, so why am I sharing this with you? Because we're on the moon card. How would the moon be affected in a 4-year? Well, if we think of moon and then we think of this, I don't know, the wheel. I was thinking about the wheel, the 10 kind of turning within the structure, and the moon moving within its cycles. Well, the moon has a structure, right? It has the same phases every single month, and we can count on those phases. So the moon people might not be so affected by the whatever the year is, right? Because it's in a 4-year, because it has its cycle, it has its structure. So that might be okay. Sun people, I think, are going to thrive, right? Because I think of the emperor and I think of power and energy and going forth. And even though the power, the keyword joyfulness might not be something I would associate with the emperor, I think there's this strength in the sun card. And so I think that will definitely support. I don't think sun people will have any issue in a 4-year. It'll be good, really good. Sun card is such an easy card, really, right? What is the shadow side of the sun card? Sunburn, I suppose. What else? That's a really good question. What is the shadow of the sun card? Think about that. I'm going to think about that for a moment while I go to this question here. Sorry if you covered this, but we're wondering if we missed the tower. Oh, yeah, I missed the tower. So I will go back to the tower. But I did talk about the tower at the beginning, sort of. I feel like I've talked about it already, but I'll talk about it again. Just let me wind up the sun, and then I'll go back to the tower, and then we'll go on. So what is the shadow of the sun? Well, the shade that is created is good for you. I don't know. I need to think about that. I haven't really thought. I mean, excessive heat, right? Excessive heat. So it could be, I'm thinking about yeah. So the shadow of the sun is excessive heat, too much fire, too much fire. So for sure, that could be a problem in an emperor year, because I'm sure the emperor has way too much fire. Way, way, way too much fire. So in a 4-year year, the people that do the sun card are really going to need to eat cooling foods, have cooling habits, cooling practices, and bring that into balance. Okay, so let's go back to the tower. Yeah, ego for sure. Ego definitely might be a problem. Okay, so let's go back to the tower. So what I talked about, if you can go back and watch the playback, because I did kind of talk about it at the beginning, and this kind of aha moment I had with the tower being 4 4s, and then being in a 4-year, that's a lot of 4s, like holy cow. So what are we going to do with all those 4s? Just like felt so much structure, and no wonder that darn tower has to explode. Diffusing, I think it's really important that, because I can see, did you ever get this impression that emperors all get these weird diseases? They all kind of die in these weird ways, if they're not killed on a battlefield, that is. They get kind of really, really sick. And if you believe that the emotions and all of that suppressed energy becomes dis-ease in the body, and sometimes we're able to release it, but other times it manifests as really big diseases. So the importance of the tower year is to really be adamant about releasing your tension, releasing your stresses. So this is a year that you want to make sure that you have your massages. You go and back to a Reiki practitioner. If you practice Reiki, do yourself Reiki every single day. You need to release the tension. And that does not mean having a drink after work. That is not releasing tension. That is suppressing tension. So releasing tension, you want to make sure you get your daily walk in. Like tower people in a 4-year need to like really be letting it go. And that doesn't mean screaming at people. That doesn't mean like sparking arguments. It means diffusing for your wellness and your health, letting go of all of that stuff that builds up inside you. Okay, so it could also mean watching your diet this year too. So really making sure that your digestive system is functioning optimally. Okay, yeah, that's kind of how I see the tower in this year. So after the sun, we have judgment, and it's called rebirth in the Druidcraft. And sometimes it's called, I'm thinking of the Sasrabido. Sometimes that deck and a few other decks call it transformation. The way that I view this card is kind of goes hand in hand with the Eight of Pentacles. And I'm not sure if we've got Eight of Pence in that reading. I have a feeling that we did, but maybe not. It's about finally, once and for all, stepping onto your path. It's like it's like that rebirth. It's kind of like, you know, all the kids leave the nest and finally you can do whatever it is you want to do. Or it's like the positive side of divorce. You know, now you can do what you want to do. It is there's a real sense of freedom with judgment, and it is really hard for some people to stand there and kind of in their nakedness go, okay, so now what? Like a lot of people get to that point and they get sick. Their bodies break down because they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what to do with their retirement. They don't know what to do with their freedom. They can't embrace it. They can't, you know, like it's a really hard place for a lot of people. And I think, you know, there's many rebirths. So we go through this fool's journey multiple times in a lifetime, I believe. I don't know how many times, some people more than others. But in a big rebirth year, you know, it can be really, really hard for some people. So in the confines of the 4-year, how is that? Well, it might be easier because if that kind of year of transformation, if that transformation feels difficult for you, having that support, right? That kind of structure might support that. But I don't know. I really don't know. It's such a big year. So the people who have that card, I want to suggest really taking your time this year, you know, like being mindful of what these reveals are. And these reveals can be kind of superficial. They can be deep. It could be as simple as like maybe, you know, you know how some people go and they have these, like, I don't know what they're called, like vanity photo shoots, or they, you know, you do a photo shoot just for yourself, or you do a naked photo shoot, or it's like you do something to see yourself for the first time. And yeah, so it's kind of a gift, but it's not an easy gift for a lot of people. So yeah. Let me know if you have any questions. And if you have any thoughts on the judgment year in the 4-year, please comment on that now or later. Awakening is in the Numinous Tarot. Yeah, awakening. There's been lots of cool movies about awakening, and I think awakening is it can also be really fearful for some people, as you begin to develop your clairs, your clairaudience, your clair. Oh, we've been on a long time. Sudden is really chatting this one up. I'll wind this up soon. I remember lying on the floor, looking up in Shavasana and watching purple orbs. And I remember sitting, I used to go to a Bikram's yoga class, and Bikram's yoga classes have these mirrors, and I'd be sitting there at the back and looking at everybody's auras in the mirror and totally distracted. Like I didn't know what to do with it. Didn't know what to do with it. And I remember not having anybody to talk about it with, didn't have a mentor. And yeah, there's been different points in my life. University, I had a transcendental experience. Random, totally random. And I collapsed on the floor. And there were people around, so I was fine. But that point, I shut down. And the year I was talking about with the orbs and seeing the auras in the Bikram's yoga class, I didn't shut down. I did explore it, and I did find people to talk to. But I think so when we come into these awakenings, it can go one way or the other. We either shut it down out of fear, or we can kind of move into this new experience. So yeah, I love holding space for people who need to talk about that kind of stuff. So if you need to talk about that kind of stuff, I'm happy to listen. All right. So, and then we have two more. So we have the World and then the Fool. The World and the Fool. So they are kind of like, right? They're the bookends, and they definitely are, they're a reflection of each other. And the World, it was actually a really weird reading for the World card, and I have lots of questions about that reading. So the people who watch the World reading, I really, really hope you follow up in 3 months and 6 months and let me know what came of that. And the World card is not the Sun card. The World card is a card of, it's joyful, but it is an ending. It is a winding up. It's a culmination of a whole cycle. And it can be a really kind of sad, right? It can be sad to have the World card show up. In one way we think, yay, it's joyful, it's great. There's nothing bad about the World card, but it is an ending. So yeah, so it has this kind of, it's like a double-edged sword, right? But it's really important, right, to celebrate all that you've done, pat yourself on the back, treat yourself well, and to be in this year of kind of, yay me, look what I've done, hurrah, right? I think that's really, really important. And the Emperor might not like that, because the Emperor likes to have the light shone on him, not on you. And then the Fool, well, the Fool doesn't care. The Fool is just going to take off outside of the kingdom, and that's really important. If you are in a Fool year there's a couple of cards where you need to really muster up the courage to move away from the kingdom, to step away on your own path and your own journey. And you might have to quite literally burn a bridge or two if you have a Fool year. And that, again, it all depends on your reaction to that. And so you need to embrace your Fool year, right? You need to embrace what that means to you. And that is going to look different for everybody who has that, who got that number 22. And, that it's also a double 11, right? It's a very special number. So you might want to do, you Fool people might want to do a little bit of reading about 22 or double 11s and things like that. I'm not an expert in numerology by any means, but it's a big year. All right, so I am experiencing a dry mouth, and I've been on for an hour and a half. So I'm going to wish you all well, really seriously, from the center of my heart. I'm just going to read what Whale Song says here. My triple goddess tarot has two different fools dressed differently, but same scene and age. I'll read back all the chat later, and yeah. So if there is something else that I missed or other questions that you have, please write that in the comments later on. So yeah, so Happy New Year to all of you, and be good to yourself, be kind to yourself, and do what you need to do. Don't apologize for it. Just be mindful of others, and speak kindly. And if you are moving from your heart, then everything is going to be okay. Stay well, and namaste. Thank you for being here tonight.